minefields, things like that, or clearing what they suspect might be minefields.
I appreciate it very much, David. It's nice to hear your voice. David Fox of the Reuters News Agency on the border. This is ABC News continuing coverage, live coverage of the war with Iraq. Well, that is Baghdad by dawn. 6 o'clock in the morning exactly in Baghdad. No air activity at the moment, though we do believe that elements of the U.S. ground forces are, in fact, in some cases, racing towards the general area of Baghdad. If you just do minor calculations about the speed of operations on the Iraqi side of the border tonight, some U.S. forces are clearly traveling very quickly. We do not know what it means that there has not been a second level of attacks on even selected targets in Baghdad tonight, but that is what Baghdad looks like this evening. One of the many mosques, some of them small and neighborhood-like, as in this particular one, and some of them built by Saddam Hussein throughout his reign, absolutely huge. And in the process, even now in the western part of the city, is being built what he had intended to be the largest mosque in the world. We can go back now on the phone to ABC's Ted Koppel, who we haven't talked to in several hours, who is with the 3rd Infantry Division. Good morning, Ted.
Good morning, Peter. Well, the ground invasion of Iraq has begun. Quite literally, 1 minute ago, the first tanks began moving across the berm. I'm watching them now. We are standing at the berm. We are still about 50 feet inside Kuwait, but the Abrams tanks are now moving across a long line of them. About 5 of them have just crossed into Iraq, and there is a huge line of them. It's just after dawn here, and of course they're kicking up a huge amount of dust as they move in. But the advance column here is made up of nothing but Abrams tanks. I assume that they'll be followed by Bradley fighting vehicles, and then you'll have the tankers, the support vehicles, the Humvees. There are going to be thousands of them passing across. Quite literally thousands, 10,000 of these vehicles. One of the Bradley tanks that's going across right now has got a rake-like blade on the front. They have been clearing for mines, and they have had considerable action during the night. I just spoke to General Buford Blunt, who's the commanding general of the 3rd Division, and he was telling me that they killed somewhere in the neighborhood, I believe he said 11 tanks last night. So they moved the Iraqis moved a tank company up here to the border last night. They were engaged during the night hours. I say, fight is just breaking here.
Were you aware that this battle was going on last night from where you were?
No, we had no sense at all. We were about 4 or 5 miles back. We broke our small encampment this morning at shortly before 5 local time, and it took us just about an hour to drive to the border. And that's where we're standing right now.
And is it
I'm hoping, Peter, that we're going to be able to come to you with a live picture. We're firing up our satellite truck right now, and we should be able to come to you in just a few minutes.
We'll certainly wait for
at least.
Is it your impression that this advance across the border was timed to coincide with first light this morning?
Well, I don't know if it was timed to coincide with first light. General Blunt has been talking about the timing of this. The timing has been changing quite literally, Peter, day by day. And I know that there was some doubt in his mind as to whether the invasion would take place today. Initially, it was supposed to begin tomorrow. I'm speaking now of the ground invasion. But I think then with the bombing of Iraq that took place yesterday, everything was moved up 24 hours. But in any event, the invasion of Iraq has begun.
It seems to be the case all across the border, with the Marine Expeditionary Force having already gone into Iraq at another part of the border. Have you any sense of how long it's going to take to get all these tanks and all these Bradley fighting vehicles across the frontier? Is there a schedule which you have any feel for?
Yes, I have a very good sense of it. It's going to take about 20 to 24 hours. I mean, we are talking here about multiple entry points, as you've indicated. And when I talk about multiple entry points, I'm only speaking of the 10,000 vehicles for the 3rd Infantry Division, not the Marines. But these guys are going to be passing through these multiple entry points for 20 to 24 hours before they are all inside Iraq.
Okay, Ted, we'll wait for your pictures. Is there anything you want to add at the moment?
No, I think that's it. I just wanted you to know that it started.
Okay. Much appreciated. Ted Koppel with the 3rd Infantry Division. And if you were to look at a map of Iraq now, we'll invite our military consultant, Tony Cordesman, in here to help us with this. This is the invasion on the left side of the line of departure, on the western side. If you just zoom in on the map, you'll see the left side is largely desert, and the 3rd Infantry also has believed from the beginning that they'd have a fairly open path going out on the western desert all the way up at least parallel to Baghdad. Tony Cordesman, tell us what else we should know at the moment.
Well, Peter, you've outlined the core part of this because they're coming up through here. Now, all the other units, the Marines, the British Army units, are in areas where there could be water barriers and water crossings. These forces coming out of the Army are coming up a line of advance where there are still some water crossings, but most of the road up to Baghdad is going to be relatively dry, relatively quick. They can either bypass a lot of these towns through the desert or potentially seize a 6-lane highway, and if they have the backing of helicopters, perhaps even use that to get to Baghdad quickly.
Let me just give you, stay on your map for just a second there. You've got that little down the left-hand side there, Nasiriyah. That's about 230 miles from Baghdad, if I recall. And it's on the Euphrates, and it's surrounded by marshes in the Euphrates Valley there. Does that mean that the tanks will stay west of Nasiriyah and just stay in the desert heading northwest?
Peter, once they get out of this area here, there are water barriers, canals, rivers through the area. There are also other bridges simply for viaducts and so on. But this is not the heavy marsh area. To get to the area where there are really major water barriers, you really have to be in and around here. So is this going to be easy? No, but do they face the kind of water barriers they would over here? It is easier to move through there. Of course, sooner or later, as they curve back toward Baghdad, they'd either have to loop all the way to the desert and then go between the lakes to the west of Baghdad, or they'd hit water barriers near some of the Shiite shrine cities.
Okay, let me go back to that map again and ask you another question then. Do you believe that the Army is going to go to the east of Nasiriyah, or is it going to stay? We take a look at our aerial map here. We have some sense of what this is actually what the terrain looks like. So the very light brown is desert, and the inn, as you can see, slightly hilly in some places and full of marshes. Do we believe that the Army will stay outside in the desert, or will go inside and have to go through some of that marshland?
Peter, normally I'd say they'd go east, but there's a lot of innovation here. We don't know what's happening with the 101st Air Mobile Division. We don't know what the 82nd is doing. What could happen would be that these land forces might go both east and then up one of the main roads, using helicopters perhaps to brush some of the Iraqi forces out of the way. And one of the advantages here is, at least to the east, there are no Iraqi major divisions at all. And if they go up the other route, they can go a long way before they hit the Republican Guards.
Once again, U.S. forces going towards Nasiriyah, are passing another hugely historic place in the history of man. About 11 miles to the southwest of that circle, perhaps even within that circle, is a place called Ur, the birthplace of Abraham. And no matter where U.S. forces go in Iraq, they are wandering and attacking and driving through and near and by some of the great cradle places of civilization. And one of them, as they go in tonight, Ted Koppel having said the 3rd Division has crossed into Iraq now, will be close to Ur. Now, Ted is back. Okay, Ted Koppel said he was going to try to get a camera up this morning. Hey, Ted, it's yours again.
Peter, can you hear me?
Very clearly, Ted. Go ahead.
All right, excellent. I must say I was trying to think of something that would be appropriate to say on an occasion like this, and as is often the case, the best you can come up with is something that Shakespeare wrote for Henry V, wreak havoc and unleash the dogs of war. And there they start moving into Iraq. You know, I spoke to you just a few minutes ago as the very first vehicles went in. I'm going to ask the cameraman just to pan over now, and you can watch this really endless line. There's a Bradley fighting vehicle going by right now, a couple of them passing through the border. And the line stretches in the other direction as far as I can see, Peter.
And so what kind of a night has it been? For example, there's a large berm behind you which looks like it has been broken through. Is that what they spend the night doing, creating these openings?
Actually, Peter, I have a feeling that there have been engineers and special ops forces in here for quite a long time. And this last berm they just broke through, I guess, during the course of the night. There's another berm about 5 miles out. They had broken through that. They quite literally just left the barbed wire in place, although I think they'd even snipped that before the invasion began. But symbolically, that barbed wire was the last thing standing between these ground forces and Iraq.
So talk to us a little bit now about logistics, because you talked about the Abrams going in first at the moment, and they're the greatest gas guzzler in the U.S. military. So where's all the refueling trucks for them? Right behind?
The refueling trucks are coming, and Peter, I'm trying to remember now. I think there are 350 of the oil tankers. Each oil tanker carries some 5,000 gallons, and I did the math before. I couldn't do it otherwise this early in the morning. 1,750,000 gallons of fuel that they are bringing with them. And they have built a pipeline through northern Kuwait all the way to the border here. And over these next few days, among the other things they'll be doing is laying pipeline, right, because they're going to be pumping oil all the way up from Kuwait into Iraq, simply to support this enormous armored force.
Talk to us a little bit about the Abrams tank. It is the principal tank in the U.S. military. It is vastly superior to the Iraqi tank, even though the Iraqis have some extremely good Russian tanks.
It is the biggest, the baddest tank in the world, and they are enormously proud of it. It has got huge firepower, and it is, at least from the front, and as you know, Peter, tankers maneuver so that they can try and approach each other so that they are coming from the front. The front of the Abrams tank is essentially invulnerable to anything that any other tank can throw at it. Now, if they can get it from the top, if they can get it from the side, they can probably knock the tread off. But it's an enormously powerful tank, and it has huge firepower with it.
And once you get into Iraq, the Abrams has the extraordinary advantage over the Iraqis of being able to fight at a greater distance.
You, of course, have put your finger right on it. They can fire from a distance of over 2 miles with extraordinary accuracy, and I believe that the best that the Russian tanks have is probably about 1.25 miles, 1.5 miles. So they can stand off, and they can be killing enemy tanks, and the enemy can't even approach them.
Would you mind asking your cameraman to show us as much as we can within your limitations of the environment you're in?
I was just about to ask him to do that. Alex, if you would just turn the camera around so that they can see this long line.
This is Alex Bruckner, one
Peter,
of our...
we will see. I hope you'll forgive me, Peter, if on this occasion I say not one of our. He's the best cameraman we've got.
Alex Bruckner, he's an Austrian.
Certainly this morning.
That's right. His sound recordist is his wife. They have seen an extraordinary amount of service for ABC in many, many parts of the world. They've been in combat more times than I think they like. But when Ted went off to be embedded with the 3rd Infantry, he was not dumb. He took Alex Bruckner with him, who's a great cameraman.
You can see the line just stretching off into the distance, Peter, and you can see what is the bane of our existence out here, those white clouds are just clouds of very, very fine sand. It gets into everything. It gets into the machinery, it gets into our eyes, nose, mouth, and it's almost impossible to stay away from it. And of course, when you're in convoy with these kinds of vehicles, the dust is just everywhere.
Ted, there was quite a lot of talk before the 3rd Infantry crossed over that the goal here was to move rapidly towards Baghdad and did not expect to meet any significant opposition, I think you said. But as we're seeing from the pictures today, the infantry only moves as fast as its slowest vehicle. So what does that mean in terms of overall speed?
Well, I'm not sure that's entirely true, Peter. The business about moving as fast as their slowest vehicle. Had they found that they were successful yesterday in killing Saddam Hussein, I think you would have seen all the fastest vehicles moving up to Baghdad probably in a day or a day and a half. As things stand, and you'll have to tell me because I don't have that information. I assume that Saddam is still alive, or don't they know?
I think they don't know. I think the general consensus at the moment is that it was when he appeared on television, or when somebody appeared on television speaking to the Iraqi people today, it was Saddam Hussein. But it's only the general consensus of analysts. I don't think anybody knows absolutely for sure at this point.
Well, since they don't know, and since I guess the assumption has to be that he's still alive, the drive toward Baghdad is something that will begin probably in another day or so, but there's some other business that has to be taken care of in some locations here in the south, and you'll be hearing about those over the course of the next couple of days. My assumption is that it'll probably take us about 4 or 5 days at the least to get up to Baghdad now.
Okay, Ted, anything, you can come back anytime you want. Anything else for the moment?
Well, I just think, Peter, we ought to take note of the significance of what is happening here, because this is an invasion that in this particular case, of course, was not prompted by any invasion of the United States. I know that members of the administration have been creating a tenuous linkage between Al-Qaeda and the Iraqis, so that there is that linkage between 9/11 and what's happening here now. But this is a more proactive, preemptive kind of operation, certainly a larger preemptive operation than I think the United States of America has ever engaged in. And whichever way it goes, I think it's going to shift the plates of the world.
Something else you could do for us at the moment, Ted, while we just keep our camera, keep Alex pointed at the various pieces of equipment going by, is to describe a little more of the actual armament that is going in. We're looking at the Abrams now. There's an armored bulldozer, I think, behind one of those Abrams. But the capacity of this armored division is really quite extraordinary and more modern in the last 10 years since the Gulf War than anybody had ever anticipated, correct?
No, you're exactly right. And in many ways, the most modern thing about it is not even its fighting capability. I'm talking now of the Abrams tanks and the Bradley fighting vehicle, but the communications that exist in each one of these vehicles with command, which is also mobile. We have a fairly significant command post, mobile command post that is occupied by General Blunt. And inside he has both satellite capabilities, computer capabilities. All this information is fed into the computers and can be immediately transmitted, not over field telephone, but immediately transmitted by touching the screen. The icons will move and he can give directions to any of these tank commanders. I mean, quite literally an individual tank commander, or they, if they are going into action, can communicate back to the commanding general, who can then distribute the information all around. So the communications, I would say, is the biggest difference in terms of their fighting capability right now. I'd like, Peter, just to draw your attention, Alex, if you could just get a shot of that. You see the panel on the side of the tank?
Or
You
on
see
the
that
or on the Bradley.
corrugated panel, Peter, on the side of the tank?
I do. That's actually
Or
the
on
Bradley, we're looking
yes.
at. Yeah.
Thank you. That's yes, you are right. We are looking at a Bradley.
Right.
That corrugated panel enables. There were a lot of instances of fratricide
Right.
during Operation Desert Storm, and those panels allow any fighting vehicle out here and any aircraft to immediately identify that vehicle as belonging to the U.S. Army. So they are hoping that the instances of fratricide will be kept down to an absolute minimum.
And maybe you could ask Alex to pan back for just a second to the left to pick up those guys who have, to their great relief, I think, got out of the back of their Bradley fighting vehicle. It's slightly misnamed as a fighting vehicle. It does have a 25-millimeter cannon on the top, and it does have an additional machine gun, but it is principally a transporter of men. And if they have to sit in the back, they tell us that it's a good, decent accommodation for 6 people, and sometimes they've got 10 people in the back. And if you've got 7 or 8 people in full chemical suits, as you've seen Ted wearing at the moment, it is about as uncomfortable as you can get. And you do not want to be a driver of a Bradley fighting vehicle. I think, Ted, if you're taller than 5'4".
I'm just a little bit taller than 5'4", and I was inside a Bradley fighting vehicle the other day, and you're absolutely right. Very, very little room. The squads, actually, you're leading into an interesting line of discussion, because the Bradley fighting vehicle normally takes a squad of 7. But in point of fact, the infantryman, as you and I remember him from World War II days or Korean days or even Vietnam, the days of the infantrymen are not quite over, but they are certainly diminished. This is a mechanized infantry division, and out of 20,000 men, only 1,200 of them are actually infantrymen in the sense of, on occasion, having to get out and walk. This is not one of those occasions. Everybody rides today.
I just wanted to add one more thing, and perhaps you can do it even better than I can, about these thermal imaging panels which are on the side. They're sometimes on the roof. You can also see them, for example, on that vehicle just going by. You can see them on the back of a fighting vehicle as well. But this is another example of the extraordinary technology which is available to U.S. forces this time, because it is the heat pattern from trucks and jeeps and Bradley fighting vehicles and tanks that airplanes and gunners pick up through their thermal imaging devices. Have I got that right, Ted?
That's exactly right. Now, those side panels, of course, would be visible to other ground forces.
Right.
What they have is a special tape that is put on top of each of these vehicles, and that tape is visible from, I'm told, 13,000 feet up.
I grant you, it is quite an amazing sight to see. You said, I thought, 10,000 vehicles in this entire movement of the 3rd Infantry Division moving forward.
That's exactly right. And there you see one of the tankers going through, and the men, you should know, have been told that they were to bring enough MREs, meals ready to eat, enough food for 5 to 7 days, enough water for 5 to 7 days, and that adds up to an enormous amount of water, because out here, Peter, it's still quite brisk and chilly, because it's shortly after dawn, the sun is just rising. But the men here are told that they should try to consume 3 liters of water every day. And so 3 liters of water per man times 7, just to carry 21 liters of water for each man. You can imagine how stuffed those vehicles are. And if you look at the side of them, you can see that the men's duffel bags are on the side. One of the things that everyone is concerned about, of course, is if in the wonderful new parlance of the modern GI, if they get slimed. They borrowed that, of course, from Ghostbusters.
Right.
What they're talking about is if they get hit by chemical or biological weapons, everything on the outside of these vehicles is gone. All of their gear, which they tend to hang from the outside of these Bradleys and these tanks, has to be disposed of, because they're not going to be able to save it.
But as we watch these tanks, and there again is an armored bulldozer going forward, reminded to add the importance of these panels on all of these vehicles, because in Desert Storm in 1991, looking back at my fact book, Friendly Fire, fratricide, as it's often referred to in the military, or blue on blue casualties, accounted for 24% of U.S. combat deaths. So this is not only a huge but a necessary step forward. Ted, I must say, the microphone you're using will remind some of our viewers of reporting from Britain during the Second World War, because that's a sound exterior sound suppressing microphone which you very rarely ever see in the field.
Yeah, well, you and I call them lip mics, and we use them when there's a lot of extraneous noise. And as you can imagine, with all this heavy armor rolling by, we thought there would be so much noise that if we used one of our more modern and tinier microphones, all you would hear is the sound of the armor, and we wouldn't be able to talk to one another.
All right. Ted, while you and I have been chatting, our principal military analyst, Tony Cordesman, has been listening to us. If we could just keep your camera up for a second, we'll invite Tony to come in and give us some sense of the overall tactic here, Tony, for
Absolutely.
the 3rd Infantry Division.
Well, I think one of the keys, Peter, here, and what you're seeing by going into the desert, is to try to avoid all of the regular Iraqi units as long as possible. You probably may even be able to drive the Republican Guards back on Baghdad. That gives the Army the maximum speed. The difficulty where Ted is, we're not sure of the position he's using. It's easy to draw these lines on the map, but sooner or later, there are bridge crossings. You have to go across the Euphrates. If you go into that main road, there's something like 40 bridges in that area. Mm-hmm. And there are Republican Guards divisions in here. There's the possibility of chemical weapons. And you've got 2 corps of the regular army. Now, if the regular army stays in place because of the air, if the Republican Guards is cut up, and Ted's forces, the forces Ted's with, can move through these areas, we could be in Baghdad in a couple of days. If the Iraqis fight well and the U.S. and British forces meet serious resistance, it could be a different story.
You use the phrase corps with reference to the Iraqi army. What is a corps in Iraqi terms?
Well, it differs according to where they are, but down in the area in the south, there is 1 corps with 3 divisions. That's a heavy corps by the standards of the Iraqis. It has a mechanized division, an armored division, and an infantry division. There's another regular Army corps that has 3 divisions, but only one of those divisions has real tank strength. The other 2 are infantry. And again, when we look at the forces Ted is with, these U.S. forces are all professional, all trained, all volunteers. In the Iraqi forces, almost all of the infantry divisions are low-grade conscripts. Many of them are Shiite. Some of them even are assimilated Kurds. They have far less incentive to fight, very little training, very little professionalism.
Let me call on now someone who has more experience with this than the rest of us all put together, and that's Major General William Nash, who's one of our analysts. He's currently a fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York City, based in Washington, but in the Gulf War, he was commander of the 1st Brigade of the 3rd Armored Division, which is now defunct, during Desert Storm, and they were part of the main attack from Saudi Arabia into Iraq and fought the Republican Guard. So, General Nash, if you wouldn't mind, as we watch this procession of tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles and bridge-building equipment go by, what would you be thinking? For one thing, where is the air cover at the moment, or is it necessary?
Well, I'm sure that General Buford's got his air cavalry assets out in front of the division at this point, conducting reconnaissance and surveillance to his front and flanks as he moves through. There's no need for air cover over the column, the fact that the Iraqi forces don't pose an air threat to him. What he's trying to do now is get the division through the berms. The brigade commanders and the battalion commanders, as soon as they clear the berm areas, they'll go into combat formations that will allow the column, though, to widen the forces will widen. They will also be able to close up, and they'll start picking up the pace of their movement to around 15 miles an hour across the desert.
Now, if you wouldn't mind doing the math for us, just break it down for people who are not so familiar. How many men and how much equipment in a division? How many men and the equipment in a battalion? And break it down even further, how much equipment and how many men in a brigade?
Well, to begin with, let's start with the company, Peter.
Okay.
And there's about, in a tank company, there used to be 17, I'm talking like an old soldier, 15 tanks.
Right.
And with about 100 soldiers, a little bit less than 100.
Right.
Three to four companies per battalion. With their support troops, that's 500 folks. 3 to 4 maneuver battalions in a brigade, plus artillery, plus engineers, plus logistical support. Probably for this operation, 3rd Infantry Division brigades are running about 5,000 soldiers.
Right.
You put the division together, 3 brigades, plus their artillery, plus their aviation, plus their logistics, plus their engineers, you're up in the 15 to 20,000 soldier range.
So the 3rd Infantry Division, as we see it proceeding across the frontier today in front of us, about 6:30 in the morning their time, is somewhere between 15 and 20,000 men, and how many tanks?
He's probably running about 350 tanks and a few more Bradley fighting vehicles.
All right, let me raise the bar just one more time. Many of these divisions and these brigades...
Peter?
Yes, Ted, go ahead. Ooh, look.
Peter, can I let me just jump in for a moment. You can probably see that a bridge is being put in place across a massive ditch that the Iraqis had built. Can you see it through the dust?
Yes,
and between the vehicles as they go by?
Absolutely.
They are laying that bridge right now, and I'm sure the general can explain to you how helpful that is and how quickly it's going to enable them to open up a new path through the berm here.
Well, Ted, you're doing a very good job by yourself. There are a lot of ditches there on either side of the berm. These berms were partly built by the Kuwaitis on this side and partly built by the Iraqis, correct?
Yeah, I suspect that the one you're looking at right now was probably built by the Kuwaitis. This is the last little bit of Kuwait that these armored vehicles are passing through right now. But this will enable them to open up yet another path. You've seen them all following this one path through the berm, and now that they have bridged that ditch about 100 meters over, I suspect that very soon you'll start seeing vehicles going over that one too.
We've just had, Ted...
What's 60 feet?
You cannot see it, but we've just had one of those rare graphic renditions of a bridge, of a piece of equipment that was absolutely perfectly fit with your description. And this, of course, General, will enable them to send 2 columns forward, not merely one. Am I correct? General Nash?
Right. That may well have been just an exercise there, because the launch, the bridge vehicle was exercising its capacity in that particular picture. I'm sure the division is using 2 to 3 crossing sites at this point as they move north. A division on a road...
Actually, if I may, General Nash, if I may just for a moment, it's far more than 2 or 3. Okay. And if it were 2 or 3, it would take them 2 or 3 days to get all this armor through here. They're going to be moving at... well, I guess now that they're doing it, there's no secret to it anymore. They're going to be moving through anywhere from 8 to 12 crossing points.
And that's absolutely necessary for the speed that they get.
Absolutely, and you can see one of those bridges, quite literally, rolling bridges. The crew members are waving at us here. I must say, in addition to all the armor that is going through here and all the equipment that these guys carry, I have yet to meet a trooper out here who doesn't carry his own camera. And we have probably been photographed more than we are photographing.
So General Nash, continue.
All right, hold on.
Sorry.
We have... yes, as a matter of fact, I've got... if you'll swing the camera around, Alex, please.
This is Lieutenant Colonel Baer. Colonel, why don't you tell them what it is you do at the division here?
Sir, I'm the G3 Operations Officer for the 3rd Infantry Division.
And in English, G3 means what?
I'm in charge of planning, operations, training. So what you see going on here today has been developed by my shop.
Tell us what is going on here. What are we seeing and how many different locations along the border between Kuwait and Iraq is this happening?
For the 3rd Infantry Division, we've got 8 separate crossings ongoing now that all look very similar to what you see here, with several brigade combat teams currently crossing into Iraq.
When exactly were the final preparations made here? In other words, when did you breach the last berm?
The berms were breached yesterday, completed during the night in the hours of darkness with no issues.
One of the great concerns, of course, as you head into Iraq has got to be the possibility of minefields. How do you handle those?
Well, in fact, you see right here engineers crossing through the berm right now. Those are specially trained soldiers who can deal with breaching conventional and unconventional minefields. So far, have had no issues with minefields.
Since you're in charge of planning, tell us how you plan for that. Maybe you can sort of give us a word picture as we're watching some of these vehicles go by of how, in fact, a division like this manages to cross through a minefield with minimal and, one would hope, no harm to any of the American soldiers.
Well, it all starts with intelligence. We've had a pretty good picture of Saddam and the Iraqi army over the last 12 years. So we've been able to determine how his forces were disposed and where he has developed obstacles to an attack. And as a result of that, then we apply, we try to avoid them to start with. But if we can't avoid them, we utilize the well-trained soldiers that you see here.
Tell me about some of the equipment, though. I'm particularly interested in that. I was describing it to Peter Jennings, who's on with us right now. You have something that is almost like a catapult that flings little bomblets over a minefield. Why don't you describe it in somewhat more expertise?
I think what you're referring to is what we call the Miklik, which is it's essentially a rocket that the engineers employ, fires about 100 meters in depth. Large explosive charge that'll clear a lane 16 meters wide and free it of surface-laid mines. It also does a pretty good job of mines that are buried underneath the ground. Very, very effective.
You've been planning for this now for the better part of a year. There actually seems to be a smile of satisfaction on your face. I mean, this is going pretty well for you?
So far, it's going great. And that's due to the great soldiers you see passing through right now. But it's been a long road, and we are ready to do our job.
Colonel Baer, thank you very much.
Sure,
appreciate it.
Ted, can I get one more question
Peter, back
to Colonel?
to you.
I was going to ask if we get one more question to the Colonel, but maybe you know.
Well,
that's okay. Maybe you know the answer.
I'm afraid the Colonel is gone. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I saw that. It's very interesting, by the way. The United States has resisted joining the rest of the world in terms of meters and centimeters, but all the military uses meters instead of yards. But does he know how far in advance the minefields are at this point? Do they know what sort of opposition they found, how deep into Iraq at this point?
I mean, I spoke to General Blunt just a couple of days ago about that very question. They don't seem to be terribly concerned about minefields, Peter. I mean, I suspect they may find some as we move deeper into the country. But here, as you heard from Colonel Baer, they've had pretty good intelligence, and they've been scoping this place out for a long, long time. And I think they're very confident of what they're going to find in the next few miles. Now, just last night, there was not exactly a tank battle, because it was only the Iraqi tanks on one side, and I suspect they were using the Apache Longbow helicopters on the other, but they destroyed some 11 Iraqi tanks here last night. Apparently, the Iraqi army had moved down a tank company in an effort, I suppose, to try and impede this crossing, but those tanks are no more.
You mentioned that at the very beginning of your report. Do we know how deep into the country the 11 tanks were? And finally, at least for this report, are you free to go forward at any time you want now and join that column?
Yes, we'll be right in the middle of that, dust, and I can assure you, Peter, we'll try and pull in behind something small, but there isn't anything small out here.
So is it your inclination to go forward now and check in with us a little later on?
Well, what I'm going to try and do, General Blunt was going to go up in his helicopter. I don't know whether it's clear enough for him to get an overview, but if he was going to go up in his Black Hawk, I was going to go up with him and take a camera, and when I come down, we'll try and hook up with our satellite track again, and you can be the appreciative audience while I bring you my vacation pictures.
Ted, that's a great briefing. Congratulations to all of you. Thanks to Alex Bruckner and to his wife, your sound recordist, and all your unit there. And we'll check with you next time you have a chance.
I hope that'll be in the next couple of hours. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Ted. Ted Koppel with the 3rd Infantry Division in southern Iraq, having a very moving experience for him and his crew and for all of those members of the 3rd Infantry Division in southern Iraq at the moment. And they'll check back in as they move forward. And it is an example of two things you're seeing there. Well, many things, but it's certainly an example of two other things, and that is the astonishing technology which all of us now have on the battlefield. Here is an ABC News crew able to pull up to the very edge of the Iraqi-Kuwait frontier, set up house momentarily, and point to the skies and broadcast live in impeccable quality as if they were down the street. It isn't like that for everybody. On the other hand, some forces are moving very quickly. Mike Surrey is on the eastern side of this front. Let me very quickly review. So Ted, the tanks are across, the Bradley fighting vehicles are across. The colonel confirms there are now 8 crossing points at which the 3rd Infantry is moving across at the moment. They think it'll take about 20 to 24 hours to get all of these men and vehicles across. But as General Nash pointed out, as they get across and they get out into a flatter, broader plain, particularly in the western side of it, they can move at a greater rate of speed than they have getting through those berm breaks that they have created, as the colonel said, throughout the night. And Tony Cordesman, of course, made the point, as they get inland, the terrain is going to get a little more difficult, particularly if they hang in the center of the country and don't swing wide, and they get up around the city of Nasiriyah there. The terrain gets a little trickier, and they will need that bridge building equipment that they were or they were not testing right conveniently in front of our cameras. Farther to the east, the Marines were across the border first, and one of our reporters with them, of course, is Mike Surrey, who's been up many times. They're traveling at a very high rate of speed, as best we could tell, and I think we can make contact with Mike again. Mike?
Don't come to us.
Don't come to them. Okay. We'll hang on for just a second and go to Tony Cordesman, our military analyst. Tony, so now we have 2 considerable forces of American fighting men and their vehicles across that southern border. What happens now?
Well, Peter, we don't know the line of advance, and I should stress that. But if it's the Marine force, there are a lot of ways they can go. They could go up along the rivers here. There's a major road net. They can go up here. But it's probable that they're not going to go up the same line that the Army might occupy. As for the Army, it has the choice. It can go along the desert. But I should note that as you get further and further to the west, the desert isn't smooth anymore. There are a lot of hills, rough areas, the terrain gets worse. Or they can find a way to cross the river and get into the major road net. And there are a lot of places they can do it. So really, we're watching a very flexible line of advance. And I think sometimes we talk about, well, there can't be any tactical surprise. Well, the fact is there can be tactical surprise because the Iraqis don't know how we're going to make that line of advance. Not only do they not know where we're going to hit them, but what's equally important, they have no way to know what the 101st is going to do with its attack helicopters, its air mobility, or where the 82nd Airborne is going. So I think we're going to see a lot of tactical surprise over the next few days.
Okay, Tony, thanks very much. My thanks to Tony Cordesman, thanks to Ted Koppel, who are on the move at the moment, and so is Mike Saray, who is farther to the east with the Marines. I think we can now make contact. Mike?
Yes, Peter, we were thinking that this invasion would start right about this time. In fact, it started 9 hours earlier, and we've been on the move all night long, covering much ground through southern Iraq, and the opposition has not been that difficult so far. I'd like to bring in Lieutenant Colonel Mike Ohl, who is the battalion commander of this tank battalion who led it. Colonel, any surprises on this first invasion effort?
Well, I think intelligence painted a picture to us that there wouldn't be real significant contact along our axis of attack, and that pretty much held true. So no real surprises other than it went off at night. Didn't originally expect it to go off at night, but that complicated matters some.
Colonel, when we last spoke, it was supposed to be starting about now. It ended up starting about 9 hours ago. What made you kick it off early?
Well, the thought was that we would do a sequential attack, is my understanding. Again, I can't speak for the people making all those decisions, but the understanding was a sequential attack to relieve some pressure in another area that was being attacked. So rather than both go at the same time, we would go one time and sort of put the enemy on his heels a little bit and let the other attack take place later. So.
Peter, we'll try to get to probably the issues that the American audience is most interested in, and that is casualties. I know neither you nor I have that much information because we've been rolling. We just got out of the tank a few minutes ago. Any indications of any casualties along your route of access?
Not that I know of, not along our route. I can only speak for my battalion. We were the point of main effort heading north, and no casualties within my battalion. We had a pretty uneventful trip. So.
What about enemy contact? How many vehicles did you confront and had to destroy?
Well, we're still totaling those numbers, and it's difficult to tell at night at long ranges what was occupied, what wasn't. But best count right now is 7 armored vehicles we destroyed, a mix of personnel carriers and tanks, older vintage tanks, T-55 types. Only a couple of those, for sure, we know were actual functioning tanks. Once we came upon them, we realized they were functioning tanks.
Now, Colonel, I heard one report that one of your tank company commanders confronted a group as large as 200 Iraqis with white sheets over their tents and their hands up as he passed right on through them.
Yes, we bypassed those. They appeared as if they weren't a threat. We're an armor force. I don't have a EPW capability at this point in time, so we had no option but to pass them by, report them back that they're there. We gave a grid location where they were at the higher headquarters.
How were the Marines trained to do this? I noticed in the vehicle I was in, I saw 2 trucks pass by, looked like military trucks filled with people, and both Marines locked and loaded but did not fire. What were they trained to do?
Well, they're trained to make good decisions, and that obviously was one good decision. I mean, they look and they determine, is that person a threat to me? And if that person isn't a threat to an M1A1 tank, they're not going to pull the trigger on it. So, in that case, they made an assessment that was not a threat. So.
Colonel, the biggest threat that we had was the chemical suits. There's been no indication of any chemical warfare. We have been in these suits now for about 12 hours.
It's been a long time, hasn't it? We've been sweating out together, but yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, no question about it. But you know, it's something that we know Saddam Hussein's got the stuff, so we just have to take every precaution possible just to make sure that the boys don't get hurt here. So.
Now, Colonel, we can't say where we are right now, but jets are flying overhead. We hear some artillery in the background. I presume they are ours.
That is a very good presumption. Absolutely, yes.
And I must explain, and probably to your wife, can you tell the story behind the mustaches that we're all supposed to be wearing?
Well, there was some thought that the Iraqis might have had our uniforms, and so the thought was that we would grow mustaches and then shave them off at the last minute so that anybody with a mustache in our uniform would be considered hostile.
So, Colonel, do we have permission to shave our mustaches now?
Yes, we do. I'm looking forward to a nice hot shave at some point in the future. So.
All right. Thank you, Colonel. Peter, do you have any questions of the Colonel?
No, I think you've done a wonderful job, Mike. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Peter.
Mike Saray, who's been traveling through the night, making it clear. I think they can't tell us where they are, but if you think about it, they were traveling at a fairly decent rate of knots. I think they crossed the line of departure about 7 hours ago. Just review a little bit of what they said. They were a little surprised they went they went when they went. They think they did not intend to go absolutely at night, though much of the early advertising about this campaign was that the U.S. would prefer to go at night because they have such a distinct advantage over the Iraqis. They've met no significant resistance along the way. That we knew from Mike's earlier report. They were just barreling along wherever they were going. We're not altogether sure. Tony Cordes, what does it mean, a sequential attack? It means that people are going together, are going sort of side by side, but one ahead of the other, and he wanted to relieve some pressure on a unit to one side or the other?
That's part of it, Peter, or you can have two lines of maneuver where one is driving forward while the other is regrouping. Remember, these can move independently as brigades or battalions. It doesn't have to move as an entire division.
Okay, Tony, thank you very much indeed, and I appreciate that. And just listening to the colonel there, no casualties, at least on his route. They did have some contact with Iraqis, and I thought I heard him say they killed, to use the parlance. It's a little cold-blooded at times, but it's military parlance. They encountered and destroyed 7 armored vehicles, which I thought he said was a mixture of tanks, T-55s, Russian tanks, which the Iraqi army used, and some other vehicles. They've been in those chemical suits for a long period of time, and when you're fully dressed up in them, it is deeply uncomfortable in the back of one of the fighting vehicles. They use the light armored vehicle, the Marines, to go forward. But they're going to keep them on for the foreseeable future. And you heard that rather touching bit at the end about the actual mustaches. Now, also with the Marines is ABC's Bob Woodruff. They have, after a long wait at the border, also crossed into Iraq. Bob, can you tell us your circumstances?
Well, Peter, it appears that the large mechanized units have come through and cleared out a lot of the mines that they were worried about allowing us to finally pass through the berm. We just went over the border through the berm, as you know so much about now, about maybe 25 seconds ago. We just got through. We're now rolling through with the light armored reconnaissance team that we've got. We've also picked up a regular reconnaissance team, which is essentially like the special forces of the Marines. And we are now moving on to our positions inside of Iraq. The landscape is very barren. There's little spots of grass here and there, but it is a lot of sand, and we are heading in at about 10 kilometers an hour.
Okay, Bob, thanks very much indeed. Do you want to add anything? I must confess I've got several things going on at the moment. Do you see evidence of air activity? Just as Mike Suri was finishing there, they heard some air activity going north. It's some of the first we've heard.
No, I have not seen any air activity lately. There has been, there were some choppers flying overhead, but these were the command and control Hueys that are essentially controlling the air war for the Marines here in a forward position. I did not see any attack helicopters or aircraft or fixed-wing aircraft flying overhead lately.
Okay, Bob, thanks very much. Please come back at your leisure when you can report. I want to digress now from the ground campaign to read something which may be tremendously significant. And it's an article in the Washington Post tomorrow morning, which I've just been given the context of. It's got 3 bylines on it. All well-known reporters for the Washington Post: Walter Pincus, Dana Priest, and Bob Woodward. And it says that which we were not 100% certain of, but had a great suspicion of throughout the day, that Saddam Hussein was the target of the bombing attack on the leadership compound, as it was described to us in Baghdad earlier today. And I'll just read it to you in the first paragraph, and then I'll read you a subsequent paragraph, which I think you'll find fascinating. U.S. intelligence officials believe that Iraqi President Saddam Hussein, possibly accompanied by one or both of his sons, was still inside a compound in southern Baghdad early yesterday when it was struck by a huge barrage of U.S. bombs and missiles. You know, there was a huge flight of cruise missiles used on this target, and 2 at least of these 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs that have not been used before. And then here are some quotes just from the article. Quote, "The preponderance of the evidence is he was there when the building blew up," according to one senior U.S. official with access to sensitive intelligence. The official added that Hussein's sons, Qusay and Uday, Qusay the older, Uday the younger, may also have been at the compound. senior administration officials said of the Iraqi president, he didn't get out beforehand. Quote again, a third administration official said, quote, there is evidence that he, Saddam Hussein, was at least injured because of indications that medical attention was urgently summoned on his behalf. The condition of Hussein's sons and any others who may have been in the compound at the time was unknown, officials said. Then there's a paragraph which is a little bit, I think, related to the business of having seen Saddam Hussein on the television earlier. And the government consulted a woman named Parasula Lampsos. You've seen her on ABC before because ABC's Claire Shipman did a long interview with her and spent some time with her. She is described as one of Saddam Hussein's longtime mistresses. The Defense Department believes that she has successfully passed a polygraph examination, and she has previously been able to distinguish Saddam Hussein from several of his doubles in more than a dozen cases, and this time she says that he was not the man in the television broadcast. That's the Washington Post, the first edition for tomorrow, which is already beginning to move on the internet, and that is as much as we know. But it dovetails and then goes beyond a fair amount of the speculation and analysis about what actually happened when the U.S. hit this target of opportunity. Remember, this is something the president signed off on last night at 6 o'clock. They needed about 4 hours warning to get, as our analysts have told us, to get the cruise missiles configured and on their way for a long flight from the Persian Gulf and or the Red Sea. They're now guided, unlike the old ones, which sort of basically had maps in their noses, topographical maps. They're now guided by the global positioning satellites, which have made the entire operation in this war so different. And if I were to summarize it, which is a little unfair to the Post, just in that one paragraph, the preponderance of the evidence is that he was in the building when it blew up. This is one senior U.S. official with access to intelligence, and he didn't get out beforehand, said another senior official. And Bob Woodward, who is one of the reporters on that particular article, along with two others, I said good reporters, Dana Priest and Walter Pincus, is going to be on Good Morning America tomorrow morning to talk about that in much greater detail. I want to go to Washington and ABC's Martha Raddatz, because she has been working this story for many hours. As we say in our trade, Martha, can you match some of that?
I think I certainly can, Peter.
Good.
We reported several hours ago that intelligence officials believed Saddam Hussein was in that residential compound, was in the bunker, and they believed he was with his two sons, just like the Washington Post. There is some contradiction here between officials. Some officials believe that Saddam Hussein was hit. Others are not so sure. They, as you said, are looking at this tape. Indeed, some believe that was Saddam Hussein in the tape. Some don't believe it was Saddam Hussein in the tape. So this is still very much in play. But intelligence sources very solidly say they believe Saddam Hussein was in that bunker, in that residential compound at the time, probably sleeping there with his sons, because it was in the middle of the night.
Okay, Martha, thank you very much indeed. So there you are with that. And now, as we've told you, or as we've said many times, not told you, said many times in the course of this coverage, that one of the first casualties of any campaign is truth. It's sometimes inadvertent. We reported some time ago, based on a British pool report from the BBC, that on the Sea King helicopter, which crashed inside Kuwait, there were, according to the British Broadcasting Corporation, 4 British and 12 Americans. The Pentagon now says that there were 4 Americans and 12 Britons, 12 from the British forces who were killed in the crash of a Marine helicopter. There has been confusion about the numbers all night. The first thought that comes to anybody's mind is how deeply hard this is on Marine families who are watching television throughout the country. I think, you know, some of them try to steel themselves before a campaign like this begins for the worst kind of news, and they have great support groups, and they manage to stay in touch with their men in the field, but up to a certain point, but it is very difficult. And the Pentagon now says that 4 Americans and 12 members of the British forces were killed in that crash of a Marine helicopter in Kuwait, not the other way around, as the British reported it some time ago. But we are still trying to get it absolutely 100% confirmed. We do believe they are the first casualties of this campaign. And as you heard just a little while ago from the Marine Colonel who was talking with Mike there, is that they haven't suffered any casualties on their part, and the 3rd Infantry Division in the West has just gone across the border. So this is ABC News continuing live coverage of the war with Iraq.
Breaking news from the war in Iraq. A military transport helicopter has gone down, killing the U.S. Tonight, the latest on the crash and the war. As U.S. ground troops move into southern Iraq, as Baghdad prepares for another round of bombing. And everyone waits for a massive assault on Iraq that has yet to begin.
This is a special edition of News 2 at 10. War with Iraq.